I guess the night everything cracked didn't start with the security guard's hand on my chest. It started 30 minutes earlier when I stepped out of the Uber in a rented suit that cost me half a paycheck and realized I was walking into a room where people like me weren't meant to be seen, only used. I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that my boss had told me, with that charming confidence he weaponized so well, "Man, you should be there. I'll make sure your name's on the list." So I showed up. Nervous, hopeful, stupid enough to think this could be the night everything changed for the better. Instead, it became the night I learned how quickly a man can be erased. The hotel was the kind of place where everything gleamed too much. Marble floors, brass railings polished to a mirror shine, a chandelier shaped like falling glass. Executives stepped out of black cars like they were born knowing how to own a sidewalk. I walked toward the entrance trying to look like someone who belonged, adjusting my cuffs, forcing my shoulders back. My name badge wasn't in my pocket yet, but I told myself that was temporary. Inside, a check-in table stood beneath a banner, dripping with corporate branding. A young woman with a headset smiled mechanically at each guest, scrolling through the digital guest list on an iPad. People ahead of me breezed through with easy small talk and familiar nods. When it was my turn, I said my name clearly. She typed it, paused, tried again. "Could you repeat it?" she asked. I did, slower. She checked the spelling, scrolled, tapped. Her polite smile thinned. "1 second, sir." That was the first moment my stomach sank. That quiet flicker, like a warning light that nobody else sees. I stepped aside, keeping my expression neutral. 2 other guests arrived behind me, and she waved them forward without hesitation. Both of their names were found instantly. I swallowed. "Can you check again?" My boss said. She raised a hand to stop me. "I'm still looking." But she wasn't. She was stalling, buying time, while she discreetly signaled someone. A security guard in a black suit came over, radio clipped to his shoulder, the kind of guy who could make even politeness feel like a threat. "Problem?" he asked. The woman lowered her voice. "He's not on the list." The guard turned to me. "Sir, could you step to the side for a moment?" My pulse jumped. I was invited. My boss? "Name's not here," he repeated, firmer now. "Please step aside." People were already glancing over. That uncomfortable curiosity everyone gets when someone else becomes a scene. I felt heat rising in my neck, but forced myself to breathe. I pulled up the messages on my phone, showing the exchange with my boss's assistant. "See you at the Gala tonight. Your name will be added." The guard didn't even look at the screen. I can't accept that. And then I saw him, my boss, striding through the main doors with a head of strategy on one side and a major client on the other. He was laughing, adjusting his cufflinks, a picture of corporate charisma. He saw me instantly. Of course he did. Standing there between the guard and the registration desk, like someone who'd shown up to the wrong building on the wrong night. Our eyes met. He hesitated just long enough to make his choice obvious. Then he smiled, that polished, empty smile, and said loudly enough for his group to hear, "Oh, hey, I didn't realize you were coming to this one. This is more of a client-tier event. Must have been a mix-up." A mix-up? The kind of word that cleans a knife after it's already been slid in. My mouth went dry. "You told me I should be here. You said—" He cut me off with a laugh, waving a dismissive hand. "I meant you should be aware of it. Not attend. Sorry about that. Security's doing their job. Don't give them a hard time." The guard stiffened, his stance changing instantly now that he understood who stood above who. My boss didn't look at me again. He clapped an executive on the shoulder, leaned in with some private joke, and disappeared through the doors with his entourage following like obedient satellites. The woman at the desk cleared her throat gently. "Sir, if you're not on the list, I really can't—" "It's fine," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. "I'll go." I walked out before I could crumble right there on the marble. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap. Cars rolled up, guests stepped out in tuxedos and gowns, smiling like they lived in a different world. I started walking toward the curb, my rented suit suddenly feeling like a costume from a play I was never cast in. Halfway to the street, I stopped. Not because I wanted to turn back, I didn't, but because something in me shifted. A small, sharp crack, the kind that doesn't heal the same way. It wasn't the humiliation that stayed with me. It wasn't even the lie. It was how easy it had been for him to pretend I wasn't worth the price of a name on a list. I got into the Uber without looking back. I didn't know it yet, but that night was the first thread pulling loose, the beginning of the unraveling. And by the time it was over, the man who pushed me out of that building would learn what it feels like to be on the wrong side of a closed door. The morning after the gala, the office felt louder than usual. Not in sound, in attention. People didn't look at me directly, but I felt the sideways glances, the half conversations that stopped when I walked by, the two neutral greetings. Word had spread. I didn't know who started it, but humiliation travels fast in corporate air. I tried to focus on emails, but my name kept appearing in ways that felt off. A calendar invite removed me from a client meeting I'd been prepping for weeks. Another project update was reassigned without explanation. Tiny shifts, but together they felt like the floor tilting under my feet. Around 10, my boss's assistant showed up at my desk. He'd like to see you. Of course he would. His office always smelled like cedar and expensive cologne, the kind that announces a person before they speak. He didn't look up when I stepped inside. "Close the door," he said. I sat. He stayed focused on his screen, pretending to read something important. "So," he began finally, "I heard about last night." "Heard?" I repeated. "You were there." He leaned back, sighing like I'd inconvenienced him by pointing out reality. "Look, you misinterpreted the situation. That event wasn't for staff. You told me to be there." "I told you you should know about it," he corrected. "There's a difference." I felt my jaw tighten. "You said you'd put my name on the list." He smiled, a small, patronizing twist of his mouth. "You must have imagined that. And your behavior at the door, drawing attention like that, it reflects poorly on the department." The room went still. "My behavior?" I asked slowly. "You stood there arguing with security. It made things awkward," he said. "And this company survives on reputation. You understand that." I stared at him, waiting for some hint of humanity to break through that polished facade. Instead, he grabbed a pen and tapped it lightly against his notebook, the way he always did before switching from conversation to verdict. "I'm not filing anything formal," he continued. "Let's just call this a reminder to manage your expectations. Know your place in the hierarchy. Don't assume access where none has been granted." Something inside me recoiled at those words. Not violently, quietly, like a door closing. But that was just the beginning. By lunch, HR had sent me an email asking if I had time to discuss an incident of miscommunication. Their tone was gentle, concerned, almost patronizing. In the small beige conference room, the HR rep smiled sympathetically, like I was an overeager intern instead of a man with 8 years of good performance behind him. "We just want to ensure there are no misunderstandings moving forward," she said. "You attempted to enter a client-tier event without authorization." "I was invited." She gave me that corporate lobotomy look, half pity, half caution. "There's no written record of that." Of course there wasn't. My boss never put anything risky in writing. When the meeting ended, something in me had settled. Not resignation, but clarity. I felt the first flicker of anger sharpen into something cleaner, steadier. Not the kind that lashes out, the kind that waits. I went back to my desk and opened my inbox with a different mindset. Every email from my boss, every vague instruction, every shifting direction, every manipulated credit, suddenly looked like evidence. Not revenge, just truth. And truth is a dangerous thing in a company built on appearances. Over the next week, the pattern deepened. A performance review that had been verbally guaranteed excellent was now labeled inconsistent. A project I'd led from the ground up was presented to leadership without my name anywhere near the deck. My boss avoided me in hallways but managed to CC HR on emails, where he asked why I'd fallen behind on tasks he'd reassigned the day before. Each move was small enough to deny, but together they formed a picture anyone could recognize. Ground softening for a push out the door. But then something shifted. Not in him, in the company itself. A rumor floated through the office about an upcoming acquisition. Then an email from HQ announced a strategic review. Then the consultants arrived. Gray suits, sharp questions, expressionless faces. Their presence changed everything. Suddenly, every department was digging for clean numbers, verifiable processes, authentic results. People who'd spent years riding charisma started to sweat. And my boss? He began acting like a man sitting in a chair whose legs were quietly being sawed off. He called sudden meetings, rewrote reports at midnight, blamed team inconsistencies for gaps in data he'd created himself. He even stopped by my desk one afternoon with a bright, brittle smile. "Just wanted to check how you're doing," he said. I stared at him. "Fine. Good, good. We're all under a lot of pressure. Best to stay aligned." He lowered his voice. "We're a team, right?" That was the moment I realized he knew something was slipping out of his control, and he was trying to pull me back into his orbit. But I wasn't orbiting anymore. I was documenting, quietly, carefully, without spite. Just facts, timestamps, threads of decisions he'd pretended were accidents or team failures. I didn't know when it would matter. I didn't know if anyone would ever ask. But I had stopped being the person who swallowed humiliation and called it professionalism. That night, as I packed up to leave, I caught my reflection in one of the glass doors. The office behind me blurred into shapes and light. I looked tired, yes, but something else too. Sharper, clearer. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. 3 weeks after the gala, the office didn't feel like the same place. It felt like a building waiting for a storm to hit. Blinds trembling though the windows were shut. People speaking in low voices. Meetings popping up on calendars without explanations or agendas. The consultants had arrived in full force. Gray suits, thin smiles, eyes that scanned every inch of a room the way a surgeon examines tissue for rot. They weren't here to observe. They were here to dissect. My boss tried to act unbothered at first, strolling through the halls with his usual swagger, clapping shoulders, saying things like, "We're in great shape, and they'll love our numbers." But his eyes betrayed him. They kept flicking toward closed doors, toward the conference rooms where the gray suits gathered, toward anyone carrying a laptop and a concerned expression. And then they asked for me. I got the email on a Thursday morning. Subject line: request for discussion, project structures and process ownership. Simple, harmless, corporate. But the moment I read it, the hair on the back of my neck lifted. They didn't want my boss. They wanted the person who actually built the work behind his presentations. The meeting room they put me in had glass walls and bright lighting that made every hesitation visible. 3 consultants sat across from me, laptops open, fingers poised. One of them, a woman with short silver hair, asked the first question. "Walk us through how your department structures workflow when preparing deliverables for executive review." I answered, clear, direct, professional. Then came the next. "And who makes the final adjustments to numbers before they are sent?" Another. "What level of visibility do you personally have into client-facing materials?" Another. "Can you speak to discrepancies between internal reports and the figures shared at the last quarterly meeting?" I felt it. The shift. They weren't just gathering data. They were tracing fault lines. I kept my tone even. I didn't accuse. I didn't dramatize. I just told the truth. I explained how my boss regularly rewrote numbers to match narrative. How he removed context because executives don't want footnotes. How he presented projections as confirmed results. How he'd pressure us to pad estimates or soften bad news to avoid making us look reactive. I didn't say he lied. I said he framed aggressively. They understood the translation. At one point, The silver-haired consultant asked. Has your boss ever taken credit for work you completed? I hesitated for the first time, not because I didn't know, but because saying it felt like crossing a line I'd never crossed before. Yes, I said finally, more than once. She didn't look surprised. She just typed. And then she asked the question that told me they already knew about the Gala. Has he ever put you in a position that publicly misrepresented your role or access in the organization? I blinked, looked at her, saw the faintest recognition in her eyes. Someone had seen it. Someone had remembered the man in a rented suit being pushed aside at the door. I took a breath. Yes, I said quietly. He has. By the end of the meeting, something in the room had changed, a subtle electric shift. The consultants weren't just recording anymore. They were connecting dots, and those dots were about to spell someone's name in big flashing letters. It wasn't mine. 4 days later, the real chaos began. Calendar invites for urgent alignment flooded my boss's schedule. Meetings with legal, meetings with strategy, meetings where he wasn't allowed to bring his own laptop. He came out of one of the conference rooms looking pale under his tan, jaw clenched, tie slightly loosened. Small details, but on a man who treated image like oxygen, they screamed. He tried to perform calm, but you can't act your way out of a nosedive when the engines are already on fire. Around noon that day, he approached my desk with a grin so wide it looked like it might crack his face. Hey, he said too loudly. We should catch up soon. Talk about your future here. My future? I asked. Yeah. Lots of moving parts. Just want us aligned. His eyes were frantic, his smile desperate. We're good, right? He needed me. Or rather, he needed my version of events. I'm fine, I said, and he nodded like I'd handed him a lifeline. But then silence dropped over the office the next morning, the kind that means something's gone very, very wrong. At exactly 10:14 a.m., 3 people from HQ came down the hall, flanked by security. They walked straight into my boss's office. The door closed. 15 minutes passed, then 30. People pretended to work, but every keyboard was quiet. At 11:06 a.m., the door opened. My boss stepped out, no tie, no jacket, a single cardboard box in his arms. Security escorted him past the desks he used to command like a king. He didn't look at anyone, not even me, especially not me. And then he was gone, not transferred, not stepping down, removed. The message was delivered company-wide in a carefully worded email 15 minutes later. Leadership transition effective immediately pending review of departmental practices and integrity concerns. Corporate speak for... We caught him lying, and he's done. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smirk. I didn't feel victorious. What I felt was something quieter, heavier, warmer, like finally exhaling after holding my breath for months. Later that afternoon, someone from HQ pulled me into a meeting room. A new face, calm voice, simple words. We've heard consistently positive things about your work. We'd like you to take on more responsibility during this transition. I nodded, not out of shock, out of recognition. This wasn't luck. This wasn't revenge. This was what happens when truth finally has somewhere to land. That night, walking to my car across the dimly lit parking lot, I stopped for a moment and looked back at the building. The window of my boss's old office was dark. It hit me then, not as triumph, but as clarity. For months he'd treated me like I was expendable. But in the end, the person he pushed aside was the one they decided to keep. And the man who left with a cardboard box, he finally knew what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. They thought I would break. I didn't. 3 months after my boss was escorted out, the office finally felt like a place where people breathed instead of bracing. Meetings ran shorter, emails were cleaner, numbers matched reality instead of narrative. I wasn't suddenly the center of anything, but I wasn't invisible either. My new manager, a quiet, razor-sharp woman from HQ, actually listened when I spoke. Decisions were made with context instead of ego. Work became heavier in a good way. Real responsibility. Real ownership, not the kind that's handed to you only when someone else wants to shine. I settled into a rhythm. Early mornings, clear agendas, reasonable expectations. It felt strange at first, working in a place that didn't require constant self-defense. Strange, but good. I wasn't climbing. I wasn't chasing. I was simply doing the job I had always done, and for the first time, someone up top saw the value in it. That's probably why I hesitated when the invitation came. An email from the new executive team. Launch Gala. Attendance required for core project leads. The irony wasn't lost on me. My name wasn't just on the list. It was listed under key contributors. I stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling a complicated knot of memories tighten in my chest. That night at the hotel door had left a bruise that wasn't visible, but still tender. The thought of standing in another crowd, under another chandelier, made something inside me flinch. But this wasn't the same event, not the same leadership, not the same version of me. So I clicked attending. The gala was at a different hotel. Modern, understated, not the kind of place that tried too hard. When I arrived, the entrance was softly lit, with staff greeting guests warmly instead of performing status checks with their eyes. I walked up the steps slowly, adjusting my jacket, reminding myself that this time I wasn't here on someone's unspoken test. Inside the foyer, a registration table waited. The woman behind it smiled. "Name, please?" I said it, her eyes lit. "Of course. 1 second." She tapped, scrolled, nodded. "Here you are. VIP list. Thank you for your work on the acquisition project. Welcome." A badge with my name and title slid across the table toward me. Clean font. No hesitation, no sideways glances, just a simple recognition that I was supposed to be there. I thanked her and stepped aside, fastening the lanyard around my neck. It should have been a small moment. It wasn't. It felt like air finally reaching a place in my chest that had been tight for too long. I was about to head inside when I heard a voice behind me. Sharp, frustrated, familiar. No, check again. It should be there. Try under the parent company name." I froze. For a second I thought my mind had conjured the voice out of memory. But when I turned, I saw him. My former boss. Same expensive haircut. Same tailored suit. But something was different. A tension around the eyes. A brittleness in his posture. Like a man balancing on a ledge he didn't realize was crumbling. He stood at the registration desk, leaning forward in a way that bordered on pleading. The staff member typed again, frowning politely. "I'm sorry, sir, I don't have you on any of the lists." "That's impossible," he said. His voice cracked on the word. "I'm consulting with 2 of the directors inside. They know I'm coming." "Well," she said gently, "if that's the case, they'll need to notify us directly." His jaw twitched. "Do you know who I am?" A pause. "No, sir," she replied. "But even if I did, the process is the same." He exhaled sharply, scanned the crowd, and that's when he saw me. His expression flickered. Recognition, then discomfort, and then something that looked like hope. Like I was a rope he could climb back up. "Hey," he said, taking a step toward me. "Glad to see you. You're with the internal team tonight, right? Could you—" He gestured vaguely toward the entrance, like I might vouch for him. Solve this. Pull him through a door he no longer had the key to. For a moment, I just looked at him. There was a time when I would have done it automatically, when I would have smoothed things over, tried to avoid awkwardness, tried to show loyalty to someone who never returned it. But that version of me had been buried somewhere in a marble lobby months ago, when a security guard put a hand on my chest and told me I wasn't on the list. I gave him a polite, steady nod, nothing more. "I'm sure they'll sort it out," I said. A neutral sentence, a gentle dismissal. The same kind of line he used to cut me off. He opened his mouth, maybe to ask again, maybe to pretend this was all a misunderstanding. Before he could, security stepped closer to him. "Sir," one of them said, "please step aside. You're blocking the line." The staff member repeated the words that had once hollowed me out. "Sir, your name is not on the list." He blinked, absorbing it, and for a second I saw it. The moment he realized no one was coming to rescue him. No board member would intervene. No title would open doors. He wasn't part of this world anymore, not by oversight, by consequence. I could have felt triumphant. I didn't. I could have walked over and twisted the knife. I didn't. Because the truth was simple. I didn't need anything from him anymore. I stepped through the entrance, the badge warm against my chest, as the door swung open for me. Light spilled from the ballroom. Music carried through the air. Somewhere inside, my team was waiting. Behind me, his voice rose again. Not angry this time, but lost. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. Inside, someone from leadership waved me over, smiling like they were genuinely glad I came. I joined them, the room buzzing with energy, clinking glasses, and new beginnings built on actual work, not illusion. As the evening settled into its rhythm, I realized something. Peace isn't an apology. It isn't revenge. It's simply the quiet certainty that you're finally standing where you were meant to stand, without begging for a place. That night, I didn't think about the door he couldn't walk through. I thought about the one that had opened for me. Finally, cleanly, without conditions. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole.